Good morning. How are you doing? Good? Yeah, you got some thumbs up. That's nice. That's nice. Some smiley faces. That's what we want to see. How's it going for you so far? All good? Yes? Yes. Good stuff. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. Let's learn some things. So I am here. I'm going to talk to you about living with your Salesforce implementation, creating a center of excellence. So let's crack on. So my name is Amanda Beard-Neilson. I am look at that, all those things there. Wonderful. I'm a Salesforce MVP. If you haven't noticed, I'm one of the organizers of today. I'm also a leader of London admins. I'm a triple trailhead ranger. I've got 10 certifications, good grief. And I have also delivered, created a project called Delivering Successful Salesforce Project on Udemy, so you can actually learn that as a course. And I also write a blog called Diary of a Sassy Girl, and in my part-time I work for Capgemini. I know, exactly, and then other times I might have some spare time as well. So that's a little bit about me. Let's crack on with the agenda. What are we talking about today? So I'm going to talk about with a Center of Excellence. I'm going to set the scene, first of all. Then I'm going to talk about what is a Center of Excellence. And they're going to move on and talk about how to create one for your own business. And with that comes what the steps are, what the tasks are, the benefits, and then we're going to wrap it up with a summary. Sound good? Yes, excellent. Audience participation, welcome. Let's go. Right, so let's start with setting the scene, shall we? So, once upon a time, somebody in your business decided to get Salesforce. What a brilliant idea, because they realized they needed to find out who was actually their customers and how do they look after them. So they bought into it, which was lovely. And from that implementation, out popped, ba-ding, an accidental admin, which often is the case. Anyone here who came in an accidental admin? Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So as with many implementations, you find that people start using the system and then all these little queries come through, like, can I have this? Can I have a new field? Maybe a new business department's coming on board. And suddenly the list for the admin starts to increase. All these different jobs, all these different priorities, to a point that potentially they become overwhelmed. What do I do first? This person's shouting very loudly. Do I look after them first? I don't know. To a point where it becomes painful because things are not moving, people are not logging in, people are not using the system, people are not adopting it, and it gets to a point whereby someone like your financial director is going to turn around and go, what's the point of this system? We're paying an awful lot of money for it. What are we getting out of it? What is the return on investment here? People aren't using it. And then comes the really awkward conversations that come through of like, do we actually continue with this system? There's some nods in the room here. Is this actually something that's happening with people? Yeah. Your financial director generally doesn't like Salesforce for some real weird reason. Maybe because it's quite expensive. So you need to make it good value. So how do you do this? Well, maybe you need to be a little bit smarter about this. Okay? So let's move forward. So a center of excellence. Now, we have got a source called Relationship One who put together this description of what a center of excellence is all about. And they say it's a team, it's a shared facility, or it's an entity that provides leadership, best practices, research, support, or training of a focus area. Now, when I think about that in terms of Salesforce, I actually think about it as maybe a department that comes together, and in that department there are teams, and these people have a vested interest in the system that you've put together. Now, those people could be end users, but they are there to talk about the system itself, and what they will do as well is they will have the system best interests in heart as well as the business needs, and they will make decisions based on that, and someone's going to actually build it and make sure it keeps moving, so you get your return on investment that you need. That's what I think it is. So let's go deeper into that. So we saw early on this accidental admin, and we saw the accidental admin just going through some pain. And frankly, they were in a lot of chaos. So how do you move from this whole spaghetti of chaos into something a lot smoother, this nice center of excellence? So let's go and dive into that, shall we? And have a look. So when I was thinking about this and thinking about my old implementations that I've done in the past, there are three things that I would break it down in order to build that. And these are the three things. You've got, first of all, creating what a department is, what this feature is called a center of excellence. Then you need to define some processes. How do you actually go about managing this actual department? And then you build a governing body as well. So let's dive into these different steps and talk about them. So first of all, let's create the department. So first of all, you need to get somebody on board who is your executive sponsor, someone who is going to be your champion, the person that you're going to escalate to should you have any issues as well. Because somebody needs to own it within the business and be there ready to support you if all hell breaks loose. So find that person there. Oftentimes, people will take on Salesforce because they have a need. That might be a sales department. And sometimes they take on Salesforce and it's like, that's my system, I want to keep it. But as you start moving forward, you realize that other departments can also benefit from this tool as well. Therefore, really, what you might want to do is think about centralizing it. And often case that centralization comes within an IT department because other systems sit there as well. But yes, they own it on a technical level, but this is where the Centre of Excellence comes on board, where you have this larger department as well, and people getting involved. So now you need to build a team to support that system. Well, who are they? Well, that absolutely depends on your implementation, and it's not purely about size either. Because you could have 1,000 people logging in every day, but they might all be in part of one department that all do all the same tasks, and therefore the changes in that system will only affect them. You might have a much smaller system with much less users, maybe 300, but you've got multiple departments in that usage marker, and you also may have lots of different processes. So in reality, you might need a team the same size as someone who's got 1,000 users versus 300 users, because it all depends on how active you are within the system and how much implementation and changes you're making as well. So I can't give you a magic number of going, well, if you've got this, then you'll need that. It doesn't work for that. You need to identify that for yourself. And that team might make up of different people, whether that is admins, developers, maybe an architect as well to make sure everything's being built nicely. They also might have support of testers, maybe a trainer. Again, you assess your needs based on your org and what you want to do about it. And then comes an asset library. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you are active in your org, if you are building lots of things, building something that is constructive and that you can use over different objects and different pages, especially when it comes to UX, different page layouts, making those page layouts align and using those elements that you can move again and again and again makes that journey for each user better because they recognize the page layouts, they recognize how to flow through them. If you are using multiple orgs as part of your business, then you can construct components which you can lift and shift into other orgs if those processes also align as well. So having an asset library where you have a point of going, these are our standards, and this is what we use, is a good starting point. Right, let's move on to the next step as well. Everyone got that shot? Let's go. Number 2, now we're going to define the process. It's all very well, we've got these people together, they're going to do stuff, they're going to do stuff, but actually, what stuff are they going to do? Well, let's think about that and actually talk through that. So first of all, defining a process actually adds some structure to your business. Some people might not like it, they might not just go, oh, for heaven's sake, why do I have to follow this process? Well, it gives fairness to the process as well. So, with that, you define who can ask for support in the first place. What you want to have is an element of control, because what you don't want is anyone in the business just rocking up to you and go, can I have that new field? Can I have this new thing? That'd be really great, because what you end up with is conflicting views. Because some people in the same department will want X, but actually they want Y, but actually what they need is Z. So what you want to do is try and define one key person in each department who is relevant, who might have an invested interest into the actual system. And what they do, they'll have all the questions and things they want, roll up to that one person, and they become the voice of that department. So you find out who can be that voice in the department. Now, there also might be some people here who aren't actual active users, they may be future users, but they also might be other people in other departments, maybe finance, maybe IT, who also have a vested interest in the system as well, because they're part of that process. There might be other teams in IT who might be integrating in with those systems. They also want to know they'll have a voice there as well. So you define all those types of stakeholders. Then provide a method of contact, because what you don't want to do, which used to happen to me, is even when I was popping to the toilet, I would used to get blasted by people going, "Hi, can you do this for me?" Like, no, I need 2 minutes, just leave me alone, all right? Just 2 minutes. Stop following me to the toilet, please. True story. They were rather keen, I love the passion really, but seriously, I just need 2 minutes just to myself. So define a process, whether that be, you can create an email, this goes to this address, you can write a case, there might be a systems, whatever, but create it and give them the information on how to do that. And then think about SLAs, service level agreements. So if you have someone who has forgotten their password, they're not in MFA or whatever like that, or they cannot log in, whatever issue, you need to maybe do that quite quickly because you want that person to be in the system and being productive. If, however, somebody turns around and goes, "Oh, yes, my department would really like to get into Salesforce. How about that? Can you do it next week for me? Thanks." Yeah, maybe not. Maybe that's something you want to take on a slower level, and that's something that you want to talk about. Okay, so define what needs to be done quickly to get people to be productive and keep working versus something that needs a bit of thought. So think about those sides. Which brings on to the idea of initial triaging. So you have whatever communication paths you've just defined, people are coming through going, "Yeah, I can't log in. Okay, let's get that sorted, let's get that person away." Then you've got somebody else going, "I really like a new checkbox." And you're like, "Really? Okay, well, maybe we'll think about that." And then there's the new department. "I want our new department in next week." "Yeah, are you sure about that?" "Maybe, maybe not." Once you've defined the process and the method, then communicate it. And also stick to it as well. Communicating means that people know what the rules are, and sticking with it means that the hippos, the highest paid person in the room, doesn't turn around and go, "Yes, but I'm very, very important. I think you know that I just need that checkbox put in. Could you do that for me? Thank you very much." You're like, "There is a process. Please, let's go with the process." Because people will try and challenge that all the time, so you've got to be a bit firm, and it's about fairness as well. Always will happen. Try and put your policies in place, put your process in place, put the communication there, stick to it, be as nice as you can, because there will always be those people who will challenge you. Right, let's look at the next step. The next step is the governing body of stakeholders. I talked about these just a little bit beforehand. So who are going to be part of your members of your governing body? These are your stakeholders. These are the people who are currently using the system, who might want to use the system, who might be integrating with the system, who might have financial influence over the system. Whatever they are, they have a voice, and you need to give them the opportunity to have a voice as well. So let them have it. And also the idea of rolling up. So you've got one department doing one thing all the time, so one person, one voice, so you don't get the conflicting views. Then share to them their responsibilities, because you need them to get involved. You need them to turn up to the meetings, whatever those frequencies are, and to understand what requests have come through from their department, whether they think, actually, these are the ones that I want to move forward, or whether I'm going to discard this. They need to manage that. They don't want to come with a list of 100 and go, "Well, these are my 100, let's go." No, okay, we can't do all of these. So make sure they have their responsibilities, they know what they're responsible for and what tasks they need to do to turn up as part of this governing body. Then you have the controls elements as well. So you're going to have a meeting. Each department gets 5 minutes to raise their case. These are the things I would like to put forward. These are what's important to us. Here's my list of 10. Well, actually, if you can prioritize 3, what are your 3? Well, these are my 3. Okay, great. But also be respectful to the other departments. Everyone thinks their department is the most important department in the world, but you might have to hear out other people. And actually, if you think about business processes and business change, your department may not win this time round when it comes to what the development is. You might have to listen to the other person and go, "Actually, for the greater good, actually I need to do this, so let's move forward." Then think about the frequency of your meeting, because the frequency of your meeting might depend on how much development you're doing in implementation. You might meet on a weekly basis if you're moving fast with change. Or you might meet on a monthly basis because actually things are quite stable, you don't need all that time, you've got your process and controls in place for your quick triages, so they don't need to be disrupted for that. Well, let's meet only up when it comes to the bigger stuff that we need to challenge. So then they can bring the voice, they can bring their opinions, they can think about the roadmap, prioritize. And then you think about the prioritization methods as well. So we talked a little bit about that already. If it's a login thing, these things don't need to be brought up into one of these meetings. They need to be done and over before this even got to a meeting itself. It's the chunkier stuff. It's like when the department wants to come in. Is that relevant? Is that part of the business future? Is that part of a need here? Or actually, can that wait for the next quarter? So you think about what is that prioritization. Maybe there's a roadmap they're putting together that will help them to structure what's going to come next and then come later. So think about that as well. Also, that team of bodies, of people, may be the ones who are going to be putting together the roadmap as well. What is important? And know that the roadmap will change over time, because that always happens. Okay, so we've looked at the steps. Now we're going to look at the tasks. And those tasks are split up into two factors: stakeholder and system. Okay, are you ready? I've got some nice power slides coming up now. Ready? Photos taken. There we go. Boom. Okay, busy slide. Now, when it comes to traditional presentation, you shouldn't be doing a busy slide, but I'm doing a busy slide for you. And guess what? The next one's coming is a busy slide. And I'm doing this on purpose because what people do not realize when they take on a Salesforce org, there is a load of stuff to do. This here is just what a stakeholder may request and stakeholder needs. And in a minute, I'm going to talk about what the system is. I'm going to go dive into some of these elements as well. So I'm going to start on the right-hand side with users. Now, often when it comes into the triaging part and quick things we need to do is basically, have they got logins? Can we get them in? Or sometimes you have the opposite side of things of something's gone wrong quickly, I need to freeze them or get them offboarded as well. So these things you need to be doing quickly as well. Then you've got the onboarding side, which might be a longer process. You know, do they have the right logins? Do they have the right profiles and permissions as well? Need to make sure that's okay. Do they need training? Probably they do. They need a little bit of support to understand what their role is and how they're going to be using the system. Then, as people change within the business, so their role might change, permissions might change. Are they got the right access into the system? You need to make sure that's all there as well. So that's the user side of things. Then come measures. How many times do you get asked about, can you just do a report for me? Anyone here? Reports? Yeah. Or dashboards? Always tweaks and tweaks and tweaks. Always, yes, definitely. And then come audit logs as well. They do think, can you just tell me whether this person logged in at this point in time or using this URL or whatever? These sort of things that need to be done regularly, unfortunately, to make sure that the data is safe. They have these elements here. Moving forward, talking about data itself. Always there's data. There's always a spreadsheet that needs to be uploaded, yeah? Yes, people are nodding, good. Why is that? Well, because sometimes the data hasn't been integrated in, so you've got a spreadsheet that you have to manually upload regularly, or I know one case where they weren't using the cases, so here's my spreadsheet, can you just upload that into my cases, please? Because, you know, adoption was something that was a bit of a challenge. So with all these updates, you've got record changes coming on, you've got those will trigger workflows. Remember those things? There you go. Now we're going to flows. And also, occasionally, you'll have record owner changes, because if you've got a sales team that's active, they would like to change those accounts around. So suddenly they just go, right, so Bob now looks after the West and John looks after the East. Can we just change all those accounts over? And then suddenly all these changes come through. So you have to keep those on top of those things as well. Stakeholder needs. Last one comes enhancements, what we just talked about earlier, where they come in and just go, I just need that checkbox, or this department's coming on board, or actually our process has changed, and suddenly we don't do it like that, but the system's still making us do it like that. I need you to change that for us. So all of these things are what stakeholders are requiring, and they have different types of prioritizations. You've got a lot of things on the user side, which might be immediate stuff. You've got measures also might be quite immediate as well. You've got data, which will be a regular ongoing thing. You need to take time for that on a regular basis. And then the enhancements might be over a longer period of time. These are your roadmap elements coming in. Okay, so we've got stakeholders done. Now let's look at system. Now, often when you take on board a Salesforce org, it's all about the stakeholders. Because let's face it, if they're not in the system, they're not using the system, then people are going to try and say, well, are we really using it for best intentions? But actually, if you don't pay attention to these elements from the system, then you're not going to look after your stakeholders. Again, we've got lots of things to think about when it comes to the system, loads and loads of things like that. And you don't realize that when you're an accidental admin that's just taken on this org and you suddenly realize, I've got to do all these things as well, not just create a field and a custom object, oh my God. Right, let's go through some of these elements. So starting again on the right-hand side, maintenance. Salesforce produces 3 releases a year. Some of these recent releases are making some serious changes, so we've got to be aware of that. Is your org ready? Will it work when the new release drops in? Are you going to spin up a sandbox to see what little golden eggs are coming through, or those Easter eggs are coming through? Also, one thing I learned the hard way was don't try and deploy at the same time a maintenance window is happening, because believe me, you will lose. Oh yeah, there's nods there. There we go. If you ever try and deploy it and the Salesforce are doing it, yeah, you're going to wait in the queue. Don't just stop. Don't. Then you've got things like backends of SSL certs that will suddenly, oh, this one's just run out. Okay, well, you have to go and figure that out. And you'll have error logs because something's happened. If you've got integrations, something's bouncing, go and have a look at those as well. Think about your health there. So then there's the contractual elements as well. You have to be a point of contact for Salesforce. So if you want to buy any more user licenses, you pop into that side of things and thank you very much, I'll buy that. If you're buying into any apps, there again as well. If you want to get quotes, you need to be in that section too. So these are other admin elements that come as part of looking after an org. Now comes data security. This has become so much of a hotter topic now in the past 5 or 7 years or whatever, when GDPR and others came into play. Data is super, super important. We now need to make sure it is properly secure. So we need to make sure that's there. Have your users got the right visibility? Are they seeing the right information, or do you need to lock it down? Are you backing up? Has anyone ever had to rely on a Salesforce own backup? Oh, one person, and you're still here. Well done. Because they are not pretty. They really aren't. I know. I do recommend maybe an app that might be downstairs. There we go. Make sure you've got the right access rights for people. Are they logging in properly? Do they see the right information they're going to do? Are you archiving things? So tasks used to archive after a year. If you're capturing that information, you're using it for reporting or thinking, is that going to catch you out? Don't know. And then how many admins have you got in your org? How much do they see? I mean, there's been times when people are all admins, you'll have the horror look of, oh my God, why? With that in mind, think about your org health. There are processes and systems now within Salesforce which didn't used to exist about 5-10 years ago. This is brilliant. In order to help you understand how healthy your org is. I mean, I also like one of them, which is in the system overview, which says, this many licenses, you're a crisis, you're going to run out. But that's okay, I'm meant to be using all my licenses. I don't want to have a whole stack. But otherwise, it's really good to see this information, especially when it comes to like API calls, if you've got integrations, whether your system's suddenly going to blow up and nobody can then process anything because you've just blown it all up. So that's happened to me as well. All fun. And so you want to put some monitoring in place maybe before it blows up so you can stop these things. Then there are health checks as well. The health checks are there to see maybe what reports you're not using. Can you tidy up things? Are there record types you're not using, page layouts you're not using, objects you're not using? As your business moves forward and processes change, tidy up. Because the more you keep there, the slower your performance will go. So keep your org tidy. Then there are licensing needs. Are there any changes on board? Do you need to buy any more in? Back over to the contractual side of things. And then we've got the org performance, which I talked about. If you have got some older system things like Visualforce or using Aura components, they will take up more performance than now the Lightning Web components as well. Are you moving forward? Are you keeping up to date? Which brings me on to architecture. Architecture, we start with the idea of best practice. Let's make sure we're using the tools that are available within the org. Do you need to build on custom? What's relevant to you? If you keep it reasonably vanilla, you know that you're going to move forward much easier. Have you got a roadmap? Well, this is where your center of excellence, your governing body will come in super useful here so that they can make sure that you stay on the right track. And then design standards. This is stuff that's been coming out now for the last few years. Let's actually make this thing look nicer. We have the ability now with Lightning components to make page layouts much more flexible, whereas beforehand, back in the days of Classic, it was like, well, this is the look and there you go. And all you could really govern is really what fields do you put where and what's the flow of the fields if you just did tabbing. We have much more flexibility now, so why not use it to make it easier for our users to actually use it, put the data in, put clean data in, so you can get the information out. And then comes system improvements. Like I said, with some recent releases that we've had, kiss goodbye to workflow rules, kiss goodbye to process builder. Now we're into the world of flow. So there might even be triggers now that you can deprecate because flow is now powerful enough to do that. Then now also recently we have the idea that permissions are moving away from profiles. So we're now moving much more into permission sets, which is going to be much more useful. But there's a lot of work there to do. So when it comes to the idea of roadmaps and what you're working on and what your team is going to be working on, it isn't all about the stakeholder. So when you're having your governance meetings, you have to stick up for yourself and go, sorry, there's some technical debt here, which actually should be known as debt, because it isn't just about the debt for the IT department that might be running it and the stuff they need to do. It's debt for the whole business, because if a system isn't working properly, it's going to affect everybody. And that's what the message you really need to communicate to your department that's going to be doing this. They have to realize that you must invest time in the system elements here. It isn't always about the stakeholder. Businesses, they always think about the stakeholder and the departments to make it forward. But if you do not look after your system, if you do not keep it healthy, then it's going to be no point. Okay, let's move forward. Let's talk about the benefits then. So, why do a Centre of Excellence? Well, first of all, it's going to put structure in place for you, and I think structure is pretty important. Everybody knows what's going on. You've got your department, you've got your people, and you have your processes all in place. They know what they're doing. So you have the structure, and then you communicate that structure, and you stick to that communication point of, we're going to meet on these frequencies, we're going to prioritize this, we're going to think about business needs, you need to turn up, you'll get your voice, but you need to be respectful for the other departments and think about the greater good. Communicate that and stick to it so that the director turns in and goes, I'm very, very important, I just need my checkbox. No, sit in the queue. Think about your roadmap as well. By having these groups of people put together and talk about their needs, you start to understand and start seeing what a roadmap might look like. You can then turn around and maybe ask for budget from the finance director, who also might be part of those conversations. So you start to understand what's important for the business, and then you can start planning ahead as well. And also remind them that actually going, I've got some system things I need to do. If I don't do that, the world ends. Which is this whole idea of the priorities. What is important for the business, and making the departments realize that it isn't just about them, that there are other people that are involved. Healthy org, happy org, healthy org, everyone still gets to use it. Always keep thinking about that as well. And with having a roadmap, you have the ability of continuous innovation, which if you are continuously innovating and you are still adding value, well, then you hopefully get a return on investment which keeps your finance department happy as well. Let's wrap up. We talked about the need for a Centre of Excellence. Why? Well, otherwise you've got that poor accidental admin who is sitting there, head in hands, just going, why? Leave me alone, I can't cope. Putting together a Centre of Excellence, you define the department, the processes, and the governing body. By doing that, you have process and control and structure. And if people can follow that and you communicate that, then you're good. We talked about the tasks and breaking it out between what stakeholders need and versus what the system needs as well. And be very formal about that and how much you need to do and the benefits of that. I've got to go. But anyway, 2 minutes over. Wow, I like to chat. So, benefits. Benefits are structure, control, roadmap, healthy org. You'll have all these elements here, which will mean that there's a good return on investment, keeps lots of people happy, and people will also be using the system as well. And I think that's a pretty good thing. I'd love to give you an opportunity for Q&A, but I don't. But come and find me afterwards. But thank you very much.